Okay, we have 10:30. We'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending Engineer Hour 2. For those who don't know me, I'm Chris Morgan. I'll be your moderator today. I work for the Commandant at the Engineer School as his program integrator. My primary focus is regimental transformation and modernization. It's a big privilege for me to stand in here for Doc Alley and moderate this our esteemed members we have here on the panel. And the idea of the panel today is to have a discussion about how we're going to better equip our engineer formations to meet the demands of the modern battlefield. We'll use the continuous transformation construct, and that is transformation in contact, deliberate transformation, and concept-driven transformation. So, as with all things in the Army, we have some rules of engagement, kind of some things that we're going to try to avoid today. And so we're not going to talk about SPAR at all. We're also going to try to avoid discussing or dwelling on any specific programs. And of course, all of our discussions will be unclassified. At the end, once the panels finishes doing their thing, we'll have some time for some questions from the audience. So please write them down and give the Commandant a hard time this morning.
Not on the script, by the way.
Yeah, that's not on the script that he gave me. Yeah. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to the insights the panel is going to bring. And with that, let's begin with some opening comments from the Commandant.
Great, thanks, Chris. Good morning. Thank you, General Beck, for being here. Commander Plummer for being here. All the leaders that are here. Folks from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that are here in support also. It's one big team. Hey, if you're here, it's because engineers are important to you. If you're able to navigate to this room without a number, it means that engineers are important to you. So congratulations for your map and compass work this morning. Hey, we're here to talk about where we need to go. As Chris alluded to, if you've been a part of AUSA this week, if anything, you've heard some great insights from our senior leaders about where we need to go. Things like sense of urgency, innovation, used a lot. So this is for that effort here for engineers. Some remarks our Chief of Staff of the Army made yesterday in the afternoon are worthy of commenting here. And if you've not had a chance to listen to his speech, it's up on YouTube already. But some great points showing us where we are, where we need to go. Talked about volatility in our world. Talked about how change is not fast enough and not at scale. I like this one right here. We can't wait for an antiquated system based on old processes to deliver obsolete technology. What a powerful statement right there, kind of our problem set. So I'm as your Commandant responsible, I'm the branch proponent responsible for .mil-PF for engineers in our Army, with and closely with Army Futures Command and the COE, the Center of Excellence, Center for Support Center of Excellence. I say that as authorities and rules are very important. I must confess, I did not personally understand authorities and roles with .mil-PF until quite recently. So I encourage you to understand that. That underpins a lot of the structure we deal with. And if you want to go faster, if you want to disrupt how we do business and get somewhere faster, we have to understand what the structure is. So I encourage you to look at AR 5-22 and educate yourself on those proponent responsibilities. I will say one of our strengths as a regiment is our network. I really believe it has to do with the nature of our work, and we have to rely on expertise in such a wide range of areas that it requires us to reach back and to network and to use others in our trusted network. So we are well postured to excel and to lead in our Army in transforming. It's very exciting times. I want to say thank you to our panel. These are hand-selected here, and they're in position to talk on purpose. So thanks for your investment, and thanks for your passion. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir. So we'll go ahead and pass the mic to each panel member, and they will explain who they are and how they're involved in transformation.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm Sergeant Major Corey Wilkins. I'm currently the Sand Hills Project Manager in 20th Engineer Brigade, recently the CSM for 27th Engineer Battalion. So I'm here in place of Colonel Shields. He was originally supposed to be here. He's caught up in Western North Carolina doing some humanitarian assistance. Definitely passes on his best wishes to be here, and you'll have to you'll have to listen to me instead. I'm specifically going to talk transformation and contact. There's a little bit of concept-driven transformation, but that's really where 20th Engineer Brigade and 27th has been put to a place where we can really be the tip of the spear on some of the transformation and contact efforts, particularly for the Engineer Regiment. Like I said, I'm the current Sandhills project manager, which is really a concept-driven, task-driven project to be able to do unmanned breaching or robotic breaching. It was given to us by our Corps Commander, so it's another unique situation where it's something that's really, really important to our Corps Commander. And then we've been able to get given the flexibility to just run with that and figure out what that looks like. It's not the first thing that we've done, really. We had some warm-ups in transformation and contact, and looking at how we reshape airfield damage repair. How do we rebuild and hold a subterranean breaching effort? And so those were kind of warm starts, right? As we say, hey, how do we reshape and retask organize, and what equipment do we need to be able to do those? And really, that led into where we are now with the Sandhills project. So for those that are unaware, a quick overview, right? We are trying to use new scales of mass to be able to make new first contact with robotics inside a breach. We've done multiple experimentations over the last year, really shown some quick wins, some success on where we can go, and we've been rewarded with more work with that from General Donahue, but also then we've got some folks across the DoD enterprise that are actually giving us some of their money to be able to continue to work forward and further explore those concepts. I think one of the key pieces to our success has been tying in, and as the boss said, the network, expanding our network to all of the modernization folks that are out there doing things, and where do we have overlapping interests, right? If for instance right now we're going to work on getting massive amounts of robots out into the breach. One of the ways that we're able to get money for that is to, hey, PEO C3T, you want to understand the forward sensing environment. We want to put a lot of robots out there to understand the forward sensing environment, and how do we network that? So where there's a common interest and overlap, we're able to say, hey, like, buy these things, we're going to put in some money from this organization, you put in some money from this organization, and together we'll figure out what that forward sensing environment does. What that does is gives us tools to be able to continue to experiment. It feeds PEO C3T to be able to say, hey, what are our requirements, and we can continue to do that. So there's multiple examples like that that we continue to work with. Another critical partner in here has been ERDIC throughout the time period. We've been able to work with Mr. Nick Boone and his team really from the start, from the inception of this, and be able to grab up some concepts and then give his team feedback on what we need, and then they're able to further develop that. We're doing the same thing now with DevCom Armaments, helping us build out some prototypes, doing the same thing with ARL, being able to do that as well, where we're able to give user feedback. So I look forward to your questions, most definitely open book, so any other questions you have, I will happily answer them, and happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Colonel Ken Fry. I'm the Director for the Maneuver Support, Capability Development Integration Director at the MSC did. I'm a Futures Command guy, but I sit at the Maneuver Support Center of Excellence at Fort Leonard Wood, and I support the Commandant's and the overall regiment's modernization efforts. If it's okay, I'm going to go a little off of my script before I come to my topic. On the table. Okay. Okay, I'll answer during Q&A. So deliberate transformation is my primary topic. The 2 to 7 year window. So FY 26 to 32, presuming that window will just continue to slide as we go forward in time. That time frame is still dominated by the signature systems that you're probably familiar with: long range precision fires, future vertical lift, soldier lethality, going on. The one that's changed, it used to be an all assured precision navigation and timing. It's now all domain sensing. So that CFT has changed. And then by now you're familiar with the contested logistics CFT, which is the new one that wasn't just rebranded, it was stood up new. Those 9 CFTs comprise over 40 individual material programs. So those are the priority for resourcing. And unfortunately, the engineers don't have, there's not one of that's an engineer thing, but that's reality. On top of those 40 systems, there are other directed systems from both the Chief of Staff of the Army and from Army Futures Command, CT General Rainey. So those are getting resourced heavily, and so the Commandant has to compete for resourcing against those. That's a reality that we're seeing now. However, that doesn't mean there's no love. So, not to get into mission telespace, but we're AFC is concept 2040 focused. What do we need for the future? And there are times when that S&T to get a thing, a capability, it matures fast enough that I'm able to deliver that faster. And there are a few specific examples. To medium assault bridge, the breaching and demolition ground engineer robot, the Badger, which is a direct output from the Sandhills project. Goblin, by now, our new breacher to totally go new, train shaping operations, robotic and autonomous construction equipment, and then autonomous rafting. All of those, right now, based on S&T technology maturity, are poised to deliver within the deliberate transformation time frame. Right now, that changes by the year, the month, because it's relying on S&T development and then the integration of all that into other Army systems. So there are dependencies on all of those that could delay when the engineers get it. Anything that has a ground robotic platform, maneuver seated, has that. That's the RCV medium. It's not the RCV light. There's no RCV heavy. There's an RCV medium. Anything that goes on a ground platform has to be on that whenever that's down selected, and then that's going to go to priority units, and we're going to take from there. So I have a dependency. That system's not going to come around until like FY 28, 29 maybe, and so I'm waiting. Although my payload for breaching, for train shaping, whatever is ready, I need my platform. Same with UAS, it's kind of the same boat. Organizational structure for HMI formations within the deliberate transformation, and as part of TIC, in fact, I was talking to Lieutenant Colonel Walker, Commander Lieutenant BB, the other day, and he's ready. He's on the TIC 2.0 X order to change. He's like, when should I change? What should I change to look like? I said, well, the future of what we want you to be, where you might be able to convert sooner, implies that you have a robotic capability, but you don't have that yet. So when you change within that deliberate transformation time frame is reliant on when that technology is mature and it's fielded to you, and then you can make an incremental change. So now your SAPL formation, instead of being all human, now it's humans plus a robot, which you can't make that MTOE change until you have a robot. There are other very serious considerations within the 2 to 7 time frame, and that's the .MLPS side. So the Commandant has responsibility for, FFID at MISCO has the doctrine. The Commandant, they also own the organizational change, so AFC drives it, but MISCO does the FDU and actually changes it. Commandant owns the training, the leader, the personnel, and then you have a facilities problem. So if you're going to get a thing and it requires a facility change, by now we're already behind. There's no way we're going to catch that based on MILCOM programming. So that's a known challenge across the entire material modernization enterprise. So that is tough. All right. And I can talk a little bit more about the TIC 1.0 and 2.0.
Yes, I'm Major Derek Sentinel. I'm an Engineer Concepts Officer. I am a Army Futures Command Officer working directly underneath Colonel Frey, but I liaison underneath the Commandant, where is actually gathering information and to feed operations under the actual concepts for engineers. So I am predominantly focused on the organizational as well as the material, in words of how we're going to actually integrate human-man integrated formations into the engineers. Looking at going out to the 2040, but again, as Colonel Frey mentioned, we also do work from now to 2040. So we're actually dealing with going through those. We do focus on everything down on the actual top-down driven organizational structure on how the engineers will look, and looking at combat engineer companies, MRBCs, multi-role bridge companies, construction companies, and how we're actually going to tie in new technologies that we're seeing, what we've seen down on the floor, but also we're incorporating new technologies and automated equipment. Again, I mostly focus on the formation as well as some of the equipment, but we do actually provide a little bit of information towards actually the .MLPF aspects overall, but it's mostly tied based on our experience inside the force as well, but it's not necessarily what we're solely focused on. We do facilitate a lot of the actual experimentation there at Fort Leonard Wood, but also throughout the entire process, going all the way from the Future Studies program, tying it to the actual the functional appraisements, again, where the concepts are actually driven, and then tying it to actual future capability workbooks. So that is my small piece of it overall. Again, we can dive into some other aspects, but I don't want to hold it up too much. Sir?
Thanks. So my name is Nick Boone. I'm the director of the Geotechnical and Structures Laboratory under the Engineer Research and Development Center. So that's the R&D arm for the Corps of Engineers. I guess I'm sitting here kind of as a representative of the larger science and technology enterprise. So DevCom and other laboratories are also working in this space very heavily. I'll only go into some details on what ERDIC's been doing. And I guess I'd structure my talk in terms of kind of the tenant accountability and explain done some early prototyping, kind of integrating various industry and lab functions together to understand what might be possible. I've done a couple of solicitations on proofing and how we might add new attachments to various existing equipment sets. We've resurrected some research from decades ago looking at alternate breaching methods. Some technologies that we've watched from the 70s that are actually maintained by the civil works side. Now the 20th is experimenting with for military applications. We've been able to adapt some of our modeling and simulation work that we were originally doing for next-gen combat vehicle, helping them understand how robotics would perform in various terrain and environmental conditions. We adapted that real quickly to be a virtual training simulator for the 20th under Sandhills, so they could get some sets and reps and kind of work through those force structure, new concepts on how big does a squad need to be, if it's going to be robotically enabled. It's much easier to execute that in a virtual environment versus trying to do it physically in the actual terrain. On bridging under the mobility tent, we've supported the CDID in looking at new concepts for how we might do bridging or rafting in the future, and actually pushed out through our Verdict Works solicitation method a call to industry to see what's out there, what might enable autonomous rafting of the future. That brings up a great point. So you probably heard a little bit about OTAs, other transaction authorities, and prototyping. We brought that vehicle to the Corps of Engineers for the first time in 2019. So the very first OTA in the Corps of Engineers was focused on military engineering. And since then, we've awarded approximately $500 million through that vehicle out to industry and academia looking for new and novel solutions. Not a lot of S&T and counter mobility terrain shaping right now. We stand ready with kind of novel sensing methods, but more than willing to support that as it goes forward. Very briefly, under the survivability tenet, working a lot on counter UAS, passive defense against that very unique threat. Doing some work with bunkers. There's a new design concern across the Army in terms of traumatic brain injury. How do we revise our survivability understanding based on that new threshold? And I'm working a lot to modify kind of MILCON hardened structures criteria. Geospatial, I'm not an expert in that space, but we have a whole lab that focuses on that. In each of these, we're actually working across the time spectrums that we've spoken about, TIC, deliberate, and concept-driven transformation. We're advising each of these leads in that area based on what we find across the industry. Lastly, an area that's often not overlooked, but it's so big it's hard to describe, general engineering. Engineer command and control for division plus operations, there's going to be some hard decisions that need to be made at that higher echelon. So we're thinking through what decision support tools, what AI-enabled software systems might help those higher echelon commanders make more suitable and accurate decisions. Engineer recon, the constant pursuit of the bridge database across the world, the load classifications, how can we make that task a little easier? Looking at construction industry, construction equipment, how might swarming, smaller equipment be used for combat roads and trails, maintenance and repair. Perhaps that's robotics in the future. We have a huge partnership with Caterpillar looking at robotic construction equipment, additive construction, working across industry to bring those kind of 3D printed buildings into our future ideas. And lastly, a lot of work on operational energy and operational water. Partner very closely with DevCom in that space, but we have a lab of civilians that spend time focused on these technology areas, and as the Commandant and the others set priorities, we step to the table and advise them on that. Happy to answer any questions on that in the future.
Thanks, Nick. So with that, we met our panel members. We'll go ahead and jump into a couple of the topics that we wanted to discuss today. So we heard a lot just now about all the different lines of effort and transformation that that the regiment's engaged in. And one of the questions that we struggle with at the school a lot is how is the Army providing material support to experimentation and innovation? How is that resourced, and where does that material come from? I know that Sergeant Major Wilkins has some experience in that lane. We'll let you go ahead and jump on that one first, and then maybe we'll go to Colonel Fry and then Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk a little bit about this. I think, we, like I said already, we partner with a lot of folks to be able to get a lot of the materials that we have. So, whether like working with GVSC to get a kinetic RCD, to be able to put a payload on that, and work with DevCom Armaments to help put that payload on there, and then be able to go test that out. And that can feed into what the Badger eventually, potentially looks like. At least we can get some feedback to be able to understand that. I think we do utilize an OTA a lot, but what we try not to do is go create something completely new outside of an existing program of record, seeded area, something that somebody else is already looking at, and saying, hey, we can use that. What is the purpose for that, and can we repurpose that? And in the hopes to be able to help them better understand requirements or a potential payload, so that it can be incorporated into a program of record in the future, and ideally faster than what it would have been otherwise, where we can help inject that user input and do rapid testing to be able to understand that. For the Sand Hills project right now, we got a pretty good chunk of money from DIU to be able to actually be able to buy things. It's one of the first things that we've actually been able to buy. Right? We haven't bought almost anything else. We got a couple stuff, some UAS from IWTSD, and a lot of that's for sub-training work that we did that we just pulled over into Sand Hills stuff. Other than that, we haven't actually bought anything. We've borrowed a lot from a lot of folks to be able to do that. And so I think we're just now getting the RDT&E funding that allows us, the type of funding that allows us to be able to buy things, and we'll be able to keep that set on the back end of this to be able to continue to see what that looks like. But that's a year's worth of work, and borrowing and asking and putting small teams together to be able to do some stuff to get the WASTA to turn around and say, hey, DIU, look, we've done all these things. Will you give us money to push this a little bit further, right? And so, again, ideally, all those things feed into Colonel Fry's team and PMCCS for the Goblin as well, right? And so that way, it may not be the exact thing that we're using, but that general concept that we're doing, we say, hey, look, this works or it doesn't work, and here's a better direction to go. So with that, I'll pass this off to Nick.
Emphasis on the RDT&E funds, because if you start out, if your command gives you innovation money that's in the form of OMA money, your lawyer's going to turn that off fast. So it's got to be RDT&E flavored. So I've talked to Colonel Cox, that you're going to focus on that conversation as well. I'll let Nick talk leveraging ERDIC and DevCom, incredible resources for equipment. Industry, so all the guys out here in the exhibition hall are surprisingly very willing to provide technology for soldier touch points. Now we have to kind of manage that because things go into soldiers' hands. There's Army testing that's got to be sure that that's a safety release. But that's free chicken. They provide it, you exercise it, you give them feedback. The unit reports feedback as well, and that helps that unit get to success a whole lot faster through those touch points. So free chicken, if they're willing to do it for free, and there are many out there that'll do it. Army Applications Lab, so Dr. Casey Furley sitting here in the pretty leather jacket, easily identifiable. So Army Applications Lab, she's the director, she's under Army Futures Command. They're doing breaching, terrain shaping, and soon they're kicking off the autonomous rafting effort. But so she gets funds in the form of SBIR funds, small business innovation research funds, which then puts out contracts. And that, as part of that, there are soldier touch points. So same thing. So on her dime, a unit is needed to do a soldier touch point. So that's when your unit gets to put hands on something, a piece of equipment, for a period of time, give feedback, which directly informs my requirements efforts. And then the last one is, PM sponsored. The PM also needs touch points. So, for example, Goblin, our breaching capability, They just completed touch point 4 at Redstone. They need soldiers to put their hands on these things to also give feedback. So the PM's looking at performance and they're measuring that, but they also value the soldier saying, hey, the red button should have been on the left side, not the right side, and here's how I need to control it. It's too hard. It took me 5 days to learn it, not 5 minutes. Those are always seeking someone so generally the PM will reach out through the regiment, through Chris Morgan, or maybe the C and say, hey, where can I engage? The downside to the AAL side and the PM part is you don't get to keep that. That's the industry owns it. Somebody owns that equipment, so you don't get to keep it. But there are incredible lessons learned through soldier touch points. It's extreme. It's probably more valuable than just about anything. I'll let Nick talk to ERDIC and DevCom because I think that's the biggest faucet to tap.
Thanks. Yeah, I think maybe some of the funnest part of our job is never throw anything away because somebody will want it at some point. But there's a little bit of truth to that. So we do keep a lot of demonstrators from our RDT&E programs because interest may peak a little while after the program has ended, and we've been lucky enough to still have some of those residuals still around that we're able to loan to these operational units or the CDID for experimentation, lessons learned, kind of to inform the campaign of learning. Industry is a great source, I agree. I think that OTA and particular contract vehicles have opened up some new possibilities for us to get our challenge statements out to industry to see who's interested, who has capabilities in this space, who's willing to come participate on their own coin versus who has to be funded to do that. So we've started experimenting with how to use the OTA in these particular challenge areas like autonomous rafting and proofing. All in all, I think the enterprise is adapting to figure out how to bring those hardware items to the Army for better experimentation and lessons learned. The safety release has been kind of an interesting hoop that we've had to jump through, but it's the willingness of the Army to kind of bend the rules and figure out what makes the most sense to get after TIC in these more near-term solutions is very encouraging. We look forward to doing more of that. But all in all, I think our ability to leverage leftover residuals from either JCTDs or other activities, could be Army-funded activities. I kind of failed to mention that one of the general engineering tasks is theater opening. A lot of joint and NATO activities in that space, which have resulted in OTAs, and we've actually exercised follow-on production contracts. So if we go down the path properly and we award the initial prototypes using the right vehicles, when we get ready to transition over to the PMs, they have the ability to go back and kind of, without competition, award full rate production contracts off of that. So we're getting smarter in how to use these new tools.
Thanks, Nick.
And,
Go ahead.
if you're going to do some innovation at the unit level, it's important to know that there's more help than you could possibly ask for. So everybody's familiar with ERDIT. Who do you call? You can call Mr. Boone, and fortunately Nick knows about everything going on. But if you're not sure, if you reach into the CDID, we have an ERDIC LNO. We also have DevCom LNOs. There's about 7 labs in ERDIC, another 7 in DevCom. The reason that's key is that here's what I want to do, and I'm looking for the right help, is you'll find that the DevCom Chem Bio Center, would you think that they would have a capability that the engineers would care about? And I'll tell you they do. They have capability in subsurface sensing. But you won't know that at your level, but if you just let the CDID know, or even Chris Morgan know, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, who at DevCom or who at ERDIC are my belly buttons? There's absolutely a network within the CDID and the schoolhouse to get you the right people to get where you want to go.
Sir, that was a perfect segue for. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick, just a couple add-ons, right? Like number one, I would say, so acknowledge the safety piece of this. We work with ATEC quite a bit with AUC and try to pull them in to be able to get as much safety releases as done. But at the end of the day, the commander owns the risk assessment, right? And so when we're operating on ranges on force comm units, the commander owns the risk assessment to be able to do things. It's a matter of, it's our imperative to make sure he or she understands the risk that we're actually taking, right? If we don't actually understand the risk, then it's really, really important to make sure ATEC is involved to help us understand the risk. There are things though that we do that is commander 06. If we're unsure, there's an 06. I have an 06 that's backing me that's going to sign off on a high risk assessment. So I just say, don't be hampered by something like, oh, I have to have an ATEC release before this. Like there's got to be some experimentation before I want to delve into money to say that I even want to spend the money and the time to have an ATEC solution. Lastly, really quickly, is part of the output of what we want to also have happen with what we're going to be doing over this next 6 to 9 months is to be able to get things that are ATEC safety approved, that are good concepts, that we can create a pathway for other people to use O&M to be able to buy. Right? We're already syncing that RDT&E into it. Once it's already been established for RDT&E, we create something like a commercial solutions opening or something else in that manner that allows you to be able to say, hey, look, this is out there. If you want to be able to buy this, we've got at least a tentative safety release, and it works. And here's the limitations and capabilities of it. And you can, a way where you can use OMA and your core budget to be able to buy some things and get them in your hands. I think that's an important part of this, and is a potential bridge to the longer term program of record. So.
Well said. Before we go on, to underscore what we're trying to do here is visual ed. To mention in the beginning, we selected these gentlemen on purpose, and they're seated on purpose, right? What we're trying to do is pull things to the left, right? Pull things towards Sergeant Major Wilkins, right? Colonel Fry represents a 5 to 7 year kind of effort, right? Deliberate transformation, and it is what it is today for some very good reasons, based on acquisitions for a very long time and hard lessons learned. But what the chief and the secretary are trying to do is pull things to the left to go faster. And that requires, you mentioned the R word, risk, right? We have to take prudent risk. We have commanders at echelon that can underscore and support that risk. It requires dialogue. But that's what we're trying to do, is pull things left. All right. Chris, what's next?
Okay, sir. So we're going to cover, we heard there's a lot of things going on in each one of these lines of effort. And we also heard that there are some finite resources. So to that end, the Commandant's directed me to set up a collaboration team site. But what I'd like to discuss with the panel here is how could we communicate and collaborate what the units are doing and learning to create efficiency, so we don't have a lot of overlap and we can learn from each other across the enterprise. I think I would Colonel Fry, do you have some thoughts on that?
I defer to Sergeant Major.
Okay, go ahead, Sergeant Major.
All right. Thanks.
Lost control.
Yeah, so I think the start of that was just a couple weeks ago. I don't know, I lost track of my Fridays, but the first call with brigade commanders and Colonel Kaluch, and starting to build that network. The spin-off that some of y'all don't maybe know, maybe you do, but I'm in email contact with all of the brigades and personnel from the brigades, either their ops sergeant major or their innovation leads. And we're setting up future meetings to be able to pull together and say, hey, all right, here's where are we going to go, right? But I think obviously it's hard to share everything. I get this question a lot, like, hey, how did you do Sandhills? It's really hard to share what happened over the past year and really kind of lay out the path. It is hard. We've got a lot of historical documents. We can share any of those things. They may not make sense to you as we've shifted this left and right all the time. But we're willing to share. It's much easier to come to us and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. How would you recommend, or did you run into this same thing? And we can say, yes, hey, actually we ran into that, and this is how we did it. Here's an example, or here's a POC that you can talk to. And so I think that's the hard part. Again, I get a lot of questions on, like, hey, can we create Sandhills in X location? Like, you can, right? It's just like, do you want to do exactly what Sandhills is doing, or do you want to do something else? And how can we help you do that? And yeah, so with that, and then it's important too to pull in some other folks that we're working with as we're talking about those things. At least give you some POCs and pull those other folks in, because it's definitely not a 20th Engineer Brigade alone done thing without a doubt. Right?
Yeah, just to supplement. A lot of acronyms out there, a lot of efforts that seem disparate and unrelated, but they actually are related. You hear about Transformation and Contact 1.0, 2.0. I see a battalion commander in the back that's been part of 1.0, right? That's now looking at Fort Liberty, doing things. We have 2.0 coming out soon that will involve engineers also. Human machine integrated formations, that is a AFC kind of spurred effort is happening. That will likely expand in the future. Then we have unit level innovation that Sergeant Major Wilkins kind of represents. So different levels, different things going on. I could say chaos. I would say the lack of clear understanding on who's doing what has been learned. Has it been learned? If it resides in that formation, I would submit no. Right, so we need to communicate and collaborate, right? All right, any thoughts from the panel? Ken?
So, Steve, I don't know if it's out on the street fully yet, but to prevent duplicative learning, duplicative application of resources to learn the same thing over and over, what the Commandant's done is kind of part out where innovation, like centers of excellence at the brigade level, will reside. So 20 is breaching. We've already spearheaded that. 36, bridging.
So this is not set yet? So
Pre-game, sorry. Triple nickel TSO, 130th General Engineering, and the 7th, I know Colonel Moulton went there, is European-based tech, because for labs to ship it over to you is expensive, but there are plenty of European partners that have tech. But that doesn't mean that's the only space that you operate. That's where you have primacy, and then you do whatever you want to do on top of that. But because what we didn't want to do is, 20's got breaching, and if another brigade went to the exact same thing with the exact same vendors and the exact same tech, that's not helpful to expanding the body of knowledge and the DOC-OPF learning on that. One thing I will say that will be helpful, that the 20th has absolutely excelled at, is marketing. That sounds silly, but let me tell you the power of the Sandhills project. Yeah, brand name, logo. Every sit rep going to multiple GOs that could possibly have an interest in it. Every single HMI thing that I've been at, I show up and there's a 20th Engineer Brigade. Usually it's you or Major Calhoun, and even when they can't go, they'll send someone. They're at everything and they're plugged into everybody. And I would shamefully say sometimes ahead of me, of my organization. They got DIU money, Defense Innovation Unit money. They are on it for marketing. And where that has benefited out of Sandhills is Badger, your Miklik on a robot solution. That is a direct output of extreme marketing, where a general officer saw that and said, this is a capability that can solve the problem now in the transformation and context space, and I like it. It was taken to Capstone 4, demonstrated in front of GOs, and continues to be experimented with, and they continue to advertise it to senior leadership. And that's what's allowed me, as a requirement writer, to take that and turn it into a requirement document and go to Army Futures Command, who owns that whole bureaucracy, and say, this is something I want, and it's sailing right through. I've had no issues getting 4-star level approval, which then passes over that to ASAL for execution. So normally I work on the 2040 or future stuff, but when you do something that's amazing, and general officers see that, it's very easy for me to tackle that, because that's outside my normal business. But it allows me to get an exception from what my food chain wants me to work on. So marketing, if you want to publish a book on that, it'll sell.
Yeah, appreciate it. Just for the record, marketing, yes. Everything that was at PC5, that whole concept, that's the man at the end of the table, Nick Boone, all him. All we did was market it. We didn't do any of that, just so everyone's clear. Some of that in his own garage, right, to figure it out. So we just capitalized on his hard work.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. With that, I think we're down to about 20 minutes, so I think we'll go ahead and open it up to the audience and see if there's any questions they'd like to ask the panel members. Colonel Belinga is behind you, waiting with the mic. Sir?
Hey, Colonel Anthony Barbina, G3 for First Corps. Just sitting in rearm working groups and sitting in the ticked OPTs, I haven't really heard, like as a Corps G3, I haven't heard the engineer voice reference. I've heard some things from the 1.0 in Hunt First, but we've got, I think, an opportunity. Specifically in 2.0, 1-2 Stryker Brigade is one of the Stryker interests. They're going to 8th Army in Korea, and I think they could test a lot of stuff. So leverage what Corey and the team have done, leverage what they've done in TIC 1.0, and potentially try some things out, because the 8th Army team is on board, and how can we leverage that in 2.0 and accelerate some of our programs that have just been sitting unfielded to the field. Is that something you think we can do, Steve?
Absolutely. I will tell you, Anthony, you're in a great position to influence that. One of the themes here is bottom up, right? That's what's really, the coin here is getting bottom up refinement to DA's guidance. And other corps are asserting themselves in determining what units are identified as TICS units, and we'll be getting those resources, and RICTO will descend upon them. once Durham Health is authorized, and talk about scheduling, assets, and integration. So I think you're in a great position with America's Core to influence how TIG 2.0 shakes down. Absolutely.
Jonathan, who primarily should we link in with to get that engineer voice? Because, like I said, it hasn't been strong in the rearm working group. And to say, these are the 3 things we want to get tested as a regiment, let's push it with the striker unit over there.
Yeah, I would say ForceCom G3. I would say that's lean into your highest G3, I think. Yeah.
So the TIC X order for 1.0 and 2.0 is has very specific equipment that's identified in that, and 0 of it is engineer oriented. There's some estimate robots that'll touch some engineers. There's some recon, small UAS that'll touch engineers, and that's about it. All the other robots are systems that are out there, but they're not on the allocation, or not for engineers, and there's nothing engineer specific to your mission. So know that. So my best recommendation is, 1, pick a platoon, because that's generally their platoon sets that are being issued under the TIC X orders. You're going to get 5 of this, 3 of that, whatever. Pick a platoon, which I know is really what the 20th approach is and the 36th current approach is, and that's going to be your center of excellence. So when you do get a robot, because you're only going to get like single digits, if you get it, focus on that unit. And then the rest of it is all the rest we've said, is where can I tap in to get other robots, other systems, and give that platoon to do my learning, because you're talking single digits numbers of systems you're going to get, and in the X order, estimates and some UAS, that's it. No engineer systems. So if you want a breaching capability, TSO capability, whatever capability, it's coming out of ERDIC, DevCom, Army Applications Lab, an industry partner. That's where you're going to get it. It's not coming from the X order for 1.0 and 2.0.
I'll just add one other thing. I think one of the reasons why Sandhills has been successful also is because we're very task oriented. We're looking at a very, very dangerous thing that is very obvious. We want to keep soldiers out of the breach, and it's very obvious to make it robotic, right? If you look at a lot of other, and I'm not in a deliberate transformation and contact in the TIC 1 or 2.0 unit, but they're giving you stuff, and they're saying, hey, figure out what you're going to do with that. Figure out what tasks you're going to do. Hey, figure out what. Like, we took a very different approach, saying, hey, here's the task. Clearly, we want to make it robotic. Here are things, things we need, requirements, capabilities we need to be able to make it robotic, right? And even if you look at the HMIF and the RICTO things, there's a great big question mark on what is RICTO. We're going to give you some robots, and what tasks are you going to do with this IBCT and ABCT? Like, what do you think you can do? And I think we're able to usurp that and say, hey, look, no. We already know it's a very dangerous engineer task that we want to put robots against, because otherwise we're going to die. And here's a concept on how that can look robotically, right? And so if you can name a specific task that you want to be able to do, you can get attention. You can say, hey, look, yeah, we agree that is dangerous, and there's a way where we can leverage some of those robotics. So just my 2 cents.
Hey, sir. You knew I'd ask something.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Hey, Dan Kratz from industry. I'll just put it from that perspective to you gentlemen. Is a couple of things is we support everything you want to do and want to be part of that. When it's dispersed, it becomes very difficult for us to understand what targets to go to. The other challenge is our metric is very simple. I hate to say it, but it is the bottom line and the money that we make. So when the CEO decides to invest in this, it's coming off of his grade sheet at his desire to do this. So again, supportive, understanding what the regiment needs and wants to be involved in that. I would just share with you, the danger is if we have repetitive exercises that don't really result into for us, a program of record, it becomes very difficult to convince that leadership on our side to invest and continue to help the regiment move forward. And the only other piece of that is, all of this is exciting to hear, but we also are engaged with the reserve component of it. Their focus isn't necessarily quite the same because, again, their state missions also become very important. The only benefit of that is they also have a separate source of funding through NAGRIA. So that may become a source that can help, provide that resource to.
Hey, thanks, Dan. It had to be said, so thanks for saying that. I would say, and Colonel Fry can confirm or deny or supplement, I think, understood the bottom line, when we have links between what we're doing now to what we're doing deliberate, right? Where what they're working on has a requirements document, or it's on its writing plan, it has a name, it's on SPAR charts, it's being in the conversation. When you have those strong links, that's when you can have a case where your incremental dollar for your company is going towards productivity for later. So, and then the second point you raised, which is great, took us 46 minutes to talk about total Army, right? This cannot be. This is not just a active component situation here. This is not going away. All right, the focus from our senior leaders on transforming how we do business is not going away. It'll be pervasive, and it'll hit all of our combos at some point or soon. Ken, anything else, sir?
So if you didn't know it, the seated AFC, I have no money. And so even though I'm required to run some level of experimentation on any capabilities before I write a document, I have to say there's enough learning done that, yeah, it's mature enough I can write a document. I know what I want. Because once I put it in writing, that's what the PM is going to go build. And I don't want them building the wrong thing. So I got to maximize on learning, right? So, but I have no money. So when I run my annual experiment, if Pearson Engineering comes, they're not getting $1, not $1. But it costs you money, right? And that goes back to your point, which is eventually you'll get fired if you keep doing these things for free, right? So how do I fix that? Keep industry involved. It's innovation helps. Innovation helps because you're helping me learn faster. He has found money. 20th has found money through ways leveraging Vertic and DevCom to their money to get things to happen, and we start that learning where there is money involved, where a vendor can come. When those lessons come back to me, I can claim that I've done enough learning through somebody else's experiment that I can write an abbreviated CDD. That turns into an RDT&E funded prototype effort with the PM. Funded prototype. I turn over that document, the PM puts out a request for proposal, and industry can participate, and now they're getting prototypes for money. And that's when it becomes a real game. So when there's innovation at unit level, if you're not reporting up, and for sure you should be reporting to the commandant, but if you're not reporting to the seated, you're not helping at all. Because that helps me write that requirement, get a prototype, and that helps move that entire timeline left. Just to go back to Badger, that was not a thing. 12 months ago was not a thing. But due to some innovation at a unit, we were able to turn an ACDD, and that'll soon hit the PM and turn an RDT&E money to kind of fix a few things. I know we're going to fix the MICLIC. We're not going to put a broken MICLIC on a new robot. I know that's one of your concerns, Sergeant Major. And then we're going to address the proofing capability because we're not going to use the D3 dose. We're going to use something else, some other way. Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, sir. I'd like to make some closing comments.
You can sit here awkwardly.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Major Jesse Kopczynski, OCE. So I understand that robots are the way forward, but as we've seen in Ukraine, engineering equipment becomes targets of opportunity. So are actions being considered to conceal these signatures before they become targets?
Yes. This falls right in with the broader protection scheme, which I know General Beck, he's the proponent for protection of stuff, not just engineer stuff, but all Army formations. So not specific just engineers, but there is an effort for next generation obscuration. So the old days of visual smoke, some of us are old enough, there were smoke platoons back in the day, that they're not anymore. The chemical corps does not do that. So what's going to protect your capability? There's a screening obscuration module that can pump smoke, but that's not good enough. Yes, there are efforts to do obscurance that will cover multi-spectrum, so not just the visual, but all the way, hopefully up to radar. That's the challenging piece to protect those capabilities. We're also have not pick on a person, but they've got ISR from space looking at us. What can space capabilities do to mess with that so they can't see you, or they see the wrong thing, see the wrong place, whatever. cyber has responsibility in this space. So that Chinese data stream, it's going on the Chinese internet, how can they interfere with that to poison it? There's a few other ways to make it not see you or misunderstand what's happening on where there's an engineer capability being employed, like a webcam. It's big one. Those things are being worked. Cyber's a little ahead on the cyber part, but the other, we're waiting on some SCT in the visual because we're not just going to blow old, regular fireworks smoke out there. We need something better, but we're diligently working on that. And then there's an entire enterprise that General Beck is leading on protection of the forces. If you're gonna, let's pick on wet gap crossing, critical point, assets in the water, choke point, what other capabilities are protecting that crossing site? How are we engaging the threat, both in time and space, to deny them the ability to target you? So as their cyber, their space realms, that deep fires, what is that? Giving you resources to be more mobile at that site, so you're not a closed bridge, but you have a new TTP or capability to be mobile on the water. I can't see anything like already, like right now, like if we go to fight tomorrow, you're going to do it the way, whatever the way is currently, right? But yes, there's an entire enterprise on how to protect critical capabilities, assets, and activities. Engineers being one of those. So you're not going to get a toy; it's an enterprise-wide solution for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so great points. I agree with all of them. I guess I'll kind of fall back to survivability as a tenant. Camouflage, concealment, deception. That signature management aspect of military operations starts well above the platform. Does the robot look like a robot? Pattern of life, signature management aspects. So it kind of goes back to that decision support for division plus echelons. So the trade space of how we protect that force, how we make the decisions on when they need to move, survivability jumps, is obviously influenced by the enemy's targeting cycle, their ISR capabilities, and so I don't know that we as an enterprise right now have those tools to make those decisions, but we're working on them, and much of them at higher classification levels. But great point, and one that is talked about a lot across the government.
Nick, just a quick follow-up, like the decision support tool.
Use the mic, please. Sorry. So we are going into a warfighter literally next month, and we've been talking to General Beck a little bit about that decision support tool you're referencing. Like, how do you create a PPL, prioritized protection list that's flexible and allows you to assess across the board? Is that kind of the direction we're going, so we can automate some of this a little bit more, use some of the tools we have, nominate things up for the critical asset list and the defended asset list to the JTF? Like, is that the direction we're moving, so we have engineer, C2, and mission command tools that enable commanders' decision making?
That's the direction we're going. Is it ready for that warfighter? No, but it's absolutely the conversation that we're having about. I actually sat through an AI session this morning. There's a lot of decisions that can be automated and present some course of action. There will be things that the commander knows that the AI didn't know about, but how we bring all of that and fuse it into one common thread so that the appropriate actions can be taken. There's a lot of work to be done there. We need the interaction with warfighters. We need the interaction with experimentation. There's a lot of talk about how can we result in a program of record. I think it all comes back to how do we capture, document the lessons learned, create that campaign of learning so that there's some strong analytics behind all of this activity so that when we go forward to ask for the acquisition dollars, everyone can see how much work has been put into this. So yes, sir, I'd love to talk to you some more about how we can integrate with you.
So that's for everybody. That's a protection decision support tool to do exactly what Colonel Barbina is asking us to take. What needs protected, when and where, and what resources are there to protect it. This is both critical capabilities, assets, activities. It's not just a thing, but if there's a movement of something that needs protected, what can do that? That is a software tool that's under my portfolio. Right now, Raytheon and IBM have options. They have solutions. Right now, they're undergoing what we call lab-based risk reductions. They have a software tool, but it doesn't necessarily function within the Army network without giving you, malware or whatever. They've got to do that. Once that's complete, current near-term testing customers, 10th Mountain Division and 20th Seaborne Command, have said, hey, I will assume risk come put that on my network. I want to use whatever IBM and Raytheon have, which is great. That's a soldier touch point where the protection cells and say, this is what I needed to do. Here are my inputs. Here's the outputs. Here's what the commander thinks of the outputs. Did it deliver or not? Those are interim touch points that the vendors are supporting, and then long-term experiment. The big game is Warfighter 26.2. This is the first active component of Warfighter, so where we're going to put mass data, big volume, big data, big decisions, and that's an experiment, and that'll go into a requirement document. So now, Colonel Barbine, if you want some of that, let's talk. There's some risk because it's not mature, but if you want a soldier touch point with that, we can talk.
One other just quick note, I think all that work is great. In the breach, at the bridge crossing site, probably on the airfield, you're going to get targeted. How are you going to stop it, right? What are you going to do? Like you're going to get targeted, right? Like that's a point, that's an absolute, we're going to target them if they're trying to breach our stuff. And if they're, right, whatever we make, I hope it works great, but you got to come up with creative ways, TTPs, other things. It's part of the robotics, right? Like make things that are attributable, make things, lots of mass that I can sustain and keep on moving, because, like, yes, we're a very critical part of the fight, and we're going to get targeted in those places. So how do we work deception? How do we work? How do we work multiple plans, feints, spoofing, things like that? Because at the end of the day, right, like those are going to be critical points in any battle that we need to be able to win. And so I would just say, you know, and especially right now, and I know everybody in this room probably already gets that, but do your junior leaders get that? Do they understand, like, hey, you're going to get targeted right here. It's going to be very, very hard. So let's make sure we understand how we're going to fight that.
Got something for you.
Sorry.
So from the concept side, Major Kaczynski, what we were talking about was for the robots, what we're really focused on is modularity of the equipment as well as a common platform across the board. We're working with the actual maneuver center as well, and we're just trying to capture their vehicles, because what we want to do is for an engineer is take those AVLBs, take the bridges off, take the MICLICs off, and actually create them into modular mission payloads so that we can keep the payloads in the back, we can move forward towards the enemy, and when we need those specific payloads, throw them on the vehicle, move straight into the fight, and actually go straight to the breach, go to the gap crossing, or any other tasking involved. That's not only just for UGVs, that's also for UASs, so we can actually either put a TSO on a UAV or a UGV, or if we want to put an additional sensor to go do obstacle intelligence, those aspects. So in order to getting to the piece that we want to look the same as a maneuver, sustainment across the board, so that no one specifically says, hey, I see your ADV rolling across the battlefield. That's my target number one. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, sir. I think we're have just enough time if you'd like to give some closing comments, sir.
Great. Thanks, Chris, for moderating today. Thanks to the panel members giving us your time, and for your thoughts. Thanks for what you do every day to advance our regiment. Thanks for those attending. I think two things emerge from this. It's obvious to me, hopefully to you, is as a regiment, leverage one of our strengths, our network. We need to organize for combat, organize for transformation. We're getting there. I'm very mindful that commanders don't work for me. They have commanders. And so they have things they need to do, readiness, deployments, RAF missions, etc. So this is a voluntary program here, and I want our commanders to assert themselves as they see fit at the scale that they can support. Second thing, besides organization, is governance. Right? The way we stay connected right now is insufficient, and so we'll have some other processes. Chris mentioned SharePoint. We're going to get better at collaboration. Thank you so much. Gracias.